Today is a very significant day. It marks a year since the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, who died peacefully in her Platinum Jubilee year at the age of 96. The longest reigning monarch in British history had dedicated her life to royal duty, reigning for 70 years, 7 months and 2 days when she died on September the 8th, 2022. And Sunetra, that day, I think we all remember it, you know, throughout the day, there was a feeling that there was something happening. And you were actually on air here in the studio,
I was here in this very seat. And there was a really lovely energy in the air. But Charlene, who was anchoring and, of course, has links to the news department, her phone on silent was slightly... It's like, bing, bing, bing. And I'm thinking, oh, something's going on, something's going on. And there was this air that breaking news was happening. Maybe it's because we work in TV and we have people around us and people in our ear in case something serious happens. But I felt like something's happening, and it then automatically became the Queen. And we were anticipating something, and then, of course, we finished the show and then the news came on and people started hearing whispers of it, and then I went for lunch with you and Nadia, because you were doing Strictly at the time, weren't you? And, of course, you had your own intel as well. We were all... It was almost like we didn't want it to be true, but we also knew something big was coming our way.
Well, I suppose that day it built, didn't it? Because members of the royal family were flying to Balmoral, where the Queen was, of course, and... You know, it was so odd. I mean, where everyone was, we were in a restaurant. It was a busy restaurant. It was. And we put our phone there. We just had live coverage because we kind of knew by this stage. But we were waiting for the announcement. And then it finally came, I think about 6 o'clock, wasn't it? And this restaurant was still bubbling away and everyone was sort of drinking and eating and stuff. And Nadia said, I really want to stand up and make an announcement, you know, and just sort of say to people that something so momentous had happened. But... You know, we didn't, but...
It was like a mark of respect. She wanted to stand up as if to say, do you think we should stand up? Do you think we should do something? It was like, we felt what
didn't want to be eating and drinking.
I didn't want to carry on my normal life in the middle of the day as if it was just another Friday.
I know. Where were you, Kelly?
Yeah, so the same thing was happening. During the day, it was bubbling up, and I got a lot of messages from my military friends, of course, being associated with the military, and I was actually getting ready for a red carpet function for the Dogs Trust, which was actually one of the Queen's charities. And I was on the red carpet, and it was literally coming up to 6:30, and as, you know, smiling, 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 as you do, and you get to the end and everyone just went, this big gasp. I was like, what? And the Queen had died. Well, I just, like, broke down in floods of tears, and Linda actually was at that same charity and came over, hugged me. And I think it's because I have such fond memories of meeting the Queen on many occasions. Obviously got my damehood at the races. And the one thing that I felt really weird about was that we were at the charity event, and, of course, it's still happening. And you think in your head, should we be enjoying ourselves and celebrating? But at the same time, I thought she loved dogs. She was patron of the charity, and I thought that's almost like a memory to give back. You know, it's a celebration of her life. But, yeah, I couldn't believe it at the time, really couldn't.
I mean, I guess the thing about it is obviously it's so sad, your longest reigning monarch, and I certainly have this very vivid image of that beautiful photograph that was at Piccadilly Circus that it put up, and, you know, it was everywhere, wasn't it? And it was as if London had stood still, and there was this incredible beaming photograph of her. So it was incredibly sad, but also we have to remember that, you know, it was a life incredibly well lived, you know, the Queen's life, you know, and if you think back, was she 21? It was on her 21st birthday, remember. That was the 21st of April, 1947, and she was Princess Elizabeth, of course, at that time. And she made that incredible speech, didn't she, to the Commonwealth, and dedicated her life to service. And, my goodness, she fulfilled that promise, you know, in the most incredible way. We've got that, actually, here.
I can make my solemn act of dedication with the whole empire listening. I should like to make that dedication now. It is very simple. I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong. But I shall not have strength to carry out this resolution alone, unless you join in it with me, as I now invite you to do. I know that your support will be unfailingly given. God help me to make good my vow. And God bless all of you who are willing to share in it.
I know that made you all
We're joined now by royal correspondent Hugo Vickers. Thanks very much for joining us, Hugo. You're 21. I can't get over that. I'm looking at that. 21. When were you first introduced to the Queen, Hugo?
1968, when I was 16. Yeah, so I was very lucky then. But of course, what's so fascinating about that clip, which I'm so glad you showed, is because I don't think there's anybody in global public life who's made a promise at the age of 21 and kept it faithfully for 75 years. It's remarkable, isn't it?
Wow, it really
I don't think if we lived 1,000 years, we'd never see anything like it again.
Yeah. I mean, you guys will... I was on holiday when I heard in Ibiza with a lot of journalists, and never have we more wanted to not be on holiday because it was such a big event. Where were you when you heard?
Well, I panicked the night before because, you know, she'd seen the Prime Ministers on the 6th of September. And what people seemed to forget was that this would be a Privy Council meeting because new ministers have to be sworn in.
Yeah.
And that she was going to do by Zoom, and it was cancelled. And I thought, well, that's very worrying because it's a very easy thing to do. She would just sit there and say, as it were, approved or whatever.
And do you remember that last photo?
Well, I know,
Balmoral,
exactly.
she looked very frail
Yes,
then,
but even
she?
so, she's still, you know, very much herself. And so the following day, there was actually a royal household funeral of a man called Sir Simon Bland, who died aged 98, who I'd known for years, who was the Duke of Gloucester's private secretary. The Queen was represented at that funeral, and I went to it in Edenbridge. And then after, of course, we all turned our phones off, and when we turned them on, then we heard the thing in the House of Commons statement, realised that it was very serious, and so then I went back to London.
So even though you suspected, and even though you knew she was a 96-year-old woman, was it still an incredible shock to you?
I think for everybody it was an incredible shock because she's always been there, and we hoped she would live forever. You know, we kind of couldn't really understand it, and especially also having perhaps, you know, seen her those last couple of days before. But I think it was, I mean, I think what was so lovely about it was that she was in Scotland. She had seen most of her family during those weeks, and she had been determined to do her constitutional duty. She'd seen one Prime Minister out, and I gather spoke to him and gave him very good advice as to how to comport himself, seeing the new Prime Minister in. And that day, I mean, she was still up and about until 11 o'clock that night, but the next morning she just didn't appear, so something went wrong at that point.
But she did have some incredible, like, characteristics, didn't she? She was so funny. Like, I thought she was brilliant. Every time I met her, you know, this is the Queen. I remember once going to Epsom races and they said, would you like to be introduced to the Queen, Dame Kelly? So I was, of course, you know, go up there. And I remember seeing her in this lovely blue outfit because she was into her bright outfits, wasn't she? And I said, oh, man, you look amazing. And everyone behind her was like this, you know, kind of laughing because normally didn't we address her as a human being. You know, but I thought she's a grandmother, she's a mother, she was a lovely lady. And I assume with what's happening now, I mean, how are they going to sort of, I suppose, a celebration of her life, really, then a morning, isn't it now? With the...
Well, they went to church this morning at Crathy Church, the King and Queen and Sarah Chatto, who was the Queen's niece, Princess Margaret's daughter, and her family. So they've paid their respects, and then I guess they'll spend the day quietly. But the Prince and Princess of Wales, as you know, are at St David's, going to a cathedral there, so that's a more public...
Wasn't there a tradition with Balmoral, though?
Well, the Queen used to, or because the King died at Sandringham, she and the Queen Mother used to very often be at Sandringham. They have a little service and things like that. But it was always a quiet day because, of course, it's a sad day. It's Succession Day. There will have been gun salutes in London this morning. But, you know, you don't want to celebrate it exactly because, you know, you're mourning the death of your parents.
Might be a better word.
Absolutely.
Listen, Hugo, you're going to stay with us because we would like to talk about, you know, the future of the royal family, and you can tell us what your thoughts are about that.